about to leave, already packing. Come with me, I'm not really asking. We'll get away to a place where we don't know. About to see.
Chapter 8. Does his story check out? How to spot a false alibi by asking a single question. Have you ever wanted to hook somebody up to a lie detector test to see if he was telling you the truth? Well, now with this technique, you can instantly find out if his story checks out or if his alibi is nothing but a pack of lies. The technique used here is called conundrum. It works by introducing a piece of evidence and watching how your suspect handles it. You'll see that you can tell if anyone is lying by asking one question, and you can use this technique in any situation when you want to check on someone's alibi. Let's say a woman suspected that her husband was not at the movies with his friends, as he said, but out with his secretary for a late-night rendezvous. Simply asking him if he really did go to the movies would only prompt him to answer yes. This is because if he was there, he would say yes, and if he wasn't there, he would likely stick to his story and say yes. And she wouldn't know whether or not to believe him. With this psychological technique, she introduces a made-up fact and then sees how he handles it. For instance, she might say, "Oh, I heard that the traffic was all backed up because of a car accident right outside the theater." Now all she has to do is sit back and watch how he responds. This is because her husband is faced with an obvious conundrum. If he wasn't at the movies, he doesn't know whether to acknowledge that there was an accident because there might not have been one. And if he says that there wasn't much traffic and there was, then she'll also know he wasn't really at the movies. But regardless of his answer, he will do the one thing that every liar does when confronted with conundrum. He will hesitate, deciding how to answer. Remember, had he been at the theater, he would have instantly said, "Oh, there was no traffic. What are you talking about?" But the liar isn't sure because he wasn't there, and so he will hesitate in his answer, and in doing so, give himself away. On top of that, he will likely answer wrongly by agreeing to what you say, because he doesn't know that you're making up the accident. PowerPoint. It's all in the details. The more detailed he is, the more you can believe in what he's saying. Made-up stories often have huge gaps and are vague and abstract. How specific is his story? Strategy review. To use conundrum, simply introduce a piece of evidence and see how he handles it. Just make sure that he would have direct knowledge of what you're talking about if, in fact, his story is true. Make sure that this evidence is something that's plausible but not true. Then sit back and see whether he's fast with the correct response. If he hesitates, changes the subject, and/or gives the wrong answer to your question, then you're not getting the truth. Chapter 9. How to tell if someone is trying to manipulate you. The 7 deadly tricks to watch out for. From the bedroom to the boardroom, learn how to see clearly and easily evaluate information without being swayed by those with selfish interests and unkind intentions. The manipulator's bag of tricks is stocked with 7 deadly tactics that can have you jumping through hoops. The good news is that by knowing what they are, you can watch out for them and never be manipulated again. These powerful manipulators are guilt, intimidation, appeal to ego, fear, curiosity, our desire to be liked, and love. Anyone who uses any of these is attempting to move you from logic to emotion, to a playing field that's not so level. He knows that he can't win on the facts, so he will try to manipulate your emotions with any one or a combination of the tactics following. Guilt. How can you even say that? I'm hurt that you wouldn't trust me. I just don't know who you are anymore. Intimidation. What's the matter? Can't you make a decision? Don't you have enough confidence in yourself to do this? Appeal to ego. I can see that you're a smart person. I wouldn't try to put anything past you. How could I? You'd be on to me in a second. Fear. You know, you might just lose this whole thing. I sure hope you know what you're doing. I'm telling you that you won't get a better deal anywhere else. This is your last shot at making things work out. Why do you want to risk losing out on being happy? Curiosity. Look, you only live once. Try it. You can always go back to how things were before. It might be fun, exciting, a real adventure. You'll never know unless you try, and you may regret never even seeing what happens. Our desire to be liked. I thought you were a real player. So did everybody else. This is going to be a real disappointment if you don't come through for us. Come on. Nobody likes it when a person backs out. This can be your chance to prove what you're made of. Love. If you loved me, you wouldn't question me. Of course I have only your best interests at heart. I wouldn't lie to you. You know that deep down inside, don't you? We can have a wonderful relationship if only you'd let yourself go and experience the wonders that the future will deliver to us. Strategy review. Look and listen objectively, not only to the words, but also to the message. These abusive maneuvers interfere with your ability to digest the facts. When these emotions creep into your thinking, temporarily suspend your feelings and look at the messenger as well as the message. If you hear anything that sounds like these manipulators, stop and reevaluate the situation. Don't act quickly and emotionally. Wait and objectively gather the facts so you don't become a hand puppet for the malevolent. Chapter 10. How to tell if a person's bluffing in any situation. How would you like to know if the guy sitting across the poker table from you really has a full house or just a pair of deuces? Or if your top executive is serious about quitting if he doesn't get a raise? There is a way to tell just about any time in any situation if someone is bluffing, because no matter what the situation, all bluffs have one thing in common. To understand how this works, let's define what a bluff really is. A bluff occurs when a person is really against something but pretends to be for it, or when he is for something and pretends to be against it. Consequently, when a person bluffs, he usually tries to appear as if he doesn't care when he really does, and he pretends to be concerned when he really isn't. In any case, he is trying to create a false impression intended to disguise his true belief. Therein lies the key. People who bluff generally overcompensate in either direction, and if you look for it, it's glaringly obvious. You can uncover a bluff instantly by noticing how someone tries to appear. A card player bets heavily and raises the pot. Does he have the cards or just guts? When bluffing, in this case in a poker hand, he wants to show that he's not timid, so he puts in his money fast. But if he did have a good hand, what might he do? That's right. Deliberate a bit, putting it in slowly to show that he really isn't sure about his hand. When people bluff at anything, in poker or in the real world, they manipulate how confident they appear. This means that they try to create the opposite impression of how they truly feel. Again, while bluffing and in trying to appear confident, he bets quickly, and when he has a good hand, he will actually wait a moment or two to pretend that he's thinking about what to do. This goes for all situations. If he reacts too quickly and assuredly, then he is trying to show that he is confident, when in many cases, he really isn't. Let's take another example. A partner in a law firm says he's going to leave unless he is allowed to take on a certain case. Is it a hollow threat or the real McCoy? If it was genuine, he would likely not make a point of trying to convey his confidence. However, an air of overconfidence will be easily observed if he is bluffing. This is, of course, because we have to assume that if he's at the firm, then he wants to be there, and that he will only be forced to leave if he doesn't get what he's asking for. So, logic dictates that he would rather stay and get the case than not get it and leave. Therefore, if he appears overly committed to the idea of leaving if he doesn't get the case, then he's bluffing, because we know that he really doesn't want to leave, but is trying to create that impression. If he is sincere in his stance that he will leave if he doesn't get his way, then he will appear almost reluctant and not overly confident in his stance because he's not pleased that it has come down to this. He's more solemn because he knows that he will have to leave if it comes down to it. But if he was bluffing, it won't come down to anything because he's not leaving. The attitudes of both are completely different and make it clear whether it's a bluff or the real thing. To understand the psychology behind this, we need only look at how people handle themselves in general. A person who has high self-esteem and confidence in himself is not the one going around showing the world how great he is. It's the insecure person who puts on airs of confidence, almost arrogance, to compensate for how he really feels about himself. He is, in fact, trying to convey a false self. And as we've just illustrated, this is identical and true for specific situations as well. In a negotiation, the person who keeps saying things such as, "I'm going to walk, you have to do right by me, I'm not settling on this one, you're going to lose me," is not going anywhere. He's bluffing. Confidence in one's position usually speaks for itself, just as a person's confidence in himself speaks for itself. It's the insecure who has to tell you how confident he is because that's the only way that we're going to find out. If, however, you hear something similar to the following phrases in a negotiation, they likely reflect a person who is sincere and who is not bluffing. "I'm sorry that you feel that way." "No hard feelings." "I don't think so, but let me give it some thought." Remember that the confident person, the one who is not bluffing, isn't interested in how he's coming across. He's unconcerned with his image, unlike his bluffing counterpart, who is consumed by others' perceptions of him. Strategy review. Uncover a bluff instantly by noticing how the person tries to appear. A person who is bluffing will always overcompensate to create the illusion that he is 100% behind his convictions.